And it's Friday. Senator Sanders is with us for our Brunch with Bernie, our national town hall meeting with the guy I think of as America's senator, Senator Bernie Sanders, sanders.senate.gov. Senator, welcome.
Good to be with you, Tom.
Great to have you with us. On the Budget Committee, I know there's a lot going on there, and it seems that the Republicans are drumming the war drums. What's on your mind?
I am
about
the ranking
things?
member on the Budget Committee, meaning that as an independent, I caucus with the Democrats, and I am the lead person on the Democratic side. And this week, the Republicans, both in the House and the Senate, brought forth their proposed budgets. Yesterday, after 6-7 hours of debate, the Senate Budget Committee voted out by a party line vote, 12-10. The Republican budget goes to the floor on Monday, and it'll be debated there all week. Tom, what a federal budget is about is it's not an appropriations bill where money goes directly into a particular agency, but it lays the blueprint for where money goes. It tells the appropriating committees that you have this much money to spend. So it plays a very important role in establishing national priorities. And not surprisingly, what the Republican budget in the House and in the Senate is about is laying the groundwork for more tax breaks for the people who need it the least and cuts in programs for people who need those programs the most. You know, when you talk about a budget, and I think in a sense every family in America, every business in America looks at a budget and you say, well, what are my needs? Where should I put my money? Where should I save money? If you look at what's going on in America today, I think most of us understand that the middle class over the last 40 years has been disappearing. In state after state, people are working longer hours for low wages. Parents are wondering how they're going to be able to send their kids to college or provide child care for their little ones. You have older workers wondering about how they're going to be able to retire with dignity. That is the playing field for ordinary Americans. They're struggling. And what the Republican budget says to those people who are struggling, we're going to make your life a little bit harder. If you're having trouble feeding your family, we're going to cut back on food stamps and other nutrition programs. If you are having difficulty saving up to go to college, we're going to cut back on Pell Grants. If you are living on Medicare, we're going to tighten that up and ask you perhaps to pay some more. So the entire Republican budget is geared towards saving money by going after the programs that the middle class and working families of this country depend upon. On the other hand, at a time when the wealthiest people are doing phenomenally well and corporate profits are exploding, what the Republican budget says, well, the rich are not quite rich enough, and we'll lay the groundwork for lowering individual tax rates for the 1% and corporate tax rates as well. So I have described their budget as a budget based on the Robin Hood principle in reverse. They're taking from the poor and working families and giving to the wealthy and large corporations. But then on top of all of that, what the Republicans are saying is, we are spending somewhere around $600 billion a year on the military, more than the next 9 countries combined. We have spent between $3 and $6 trillion, or will spend, fighting the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and taking care of the veterans who fought those wars. But that's not enough. We need to be spending even more on the military. And one of the interesting aspects of the committee debate yesterday was an amendment that asked for another $38 billion for the military to be off budget, to be part of what's called the Overseas Contingency Account, which is not part of the overall budget. It's emergency funding. So our Republicans who lecture the American people every day about how we have to cut back on Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and education and nutrition and infrastructure, all the important things, When it comes to spending money on the military, it's not a problem, and we don't have to worry about the deficit. So all of that leads me to two conclusions, which worry me in both instances. Number one, I have the feeling, based on this letter that 47 Republicans wrote to the Ayatollah, that they really do not want an agreement with Iran in which Iran ceases to have the ability to create nuclear weapons. Some of them, at least, would prefer a war with Iran. And I think they also would prefer a war with ISIS. So after two disastrous wars, which have cost us some 67 young Americans, have led to 500,000 coming home with PTSD or TBI, led to the cost of between $3 and $6 trillion by the time we take care of the last veteran. Apparently these guys want more. Two wars is not enough. And maybe we can get a third war, maybe even a fourth war. And it's not clear, but my guess is they don't intend to pay for those wars either. Just add it on to the deficit, and then when the deficit goes up, we can talk about the absolute need to cut Social Security and Medicare with even more stringent tone. So that is where the budget debate was. It will be on the floor, as I said, Monday, and we'll see what happens. But I would hope that the president gets out his veto pen and makes sure that when this budget is converted into appropriations bills, that he makes certain that the Republican ideas do not prevail.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Okay, so the process here is the Republicans put forward basically a statement of intent.
Well, it's more than that. It's more than intent and goals. It is that, but it is also a real firm dollar amount as to how much the United States government can spend. Mm-hmm. What it's like if I say to you, okay, you got $100, and that's all you can spend, but you determine how that 100 is spent.
I see.
But if I say you got 120, well, you have more money to play with. Or if I say 80, you have less money to play with.
Right.
So what they are saying is we want less money available for the needs of working families and the middle class. We want more money available for the upper class. We want more money available for the military.
Right.
So they lay the groundwork, and then the committees fill in the blanks.
So during the early years of President Obama's presidency, as I recall, we had a number of years there where there was no budget. Congress couldn't come to one. Right. Is that a possibility? And if so, what happens? Do we just roll over last year's budget?
There will be a budget. I think it'll be a bad budget. But I think the Republicans now control both houses, and I think they will come up with a budget. But at the end of the day, this budget gets converted into real legislation as to how much money we spend on defense, how much money we spend on food stamps, how much money we spend on education, how much money we spend on this, that, and the other thing. So the Republican, and that's where we are. Now, the alternative budget, in a sense, the proposals that I and other members of the Democratic caucus brought forward were very, very different. Our goals were at a time when real unemployment is around 11%, and youth unemployment is somewhere around 17%, and African-American youth unemployment is much higher than that. We said there's a real need now to create millions of decent-paying jobs, and the best way to do that is to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. I offered that amendment. We didn't get one Republican vote in support of it.
That makes me crazy. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. We'll be right back with your calls for Senator Sanders on our Brunch with Bernie Friday. We'll be back right after this, 15 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Be sure to check out Senator Sanders' website, sanders.senate.gov. You can sign up for the Bernie Buzz. You can hop from there over to his Facebook page. So, Senator, ready to take some calls?
Let's do it.
Okay, Cynthia in College Station, Texas. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Senator Sanders. I had a question about Social Security. What I was wondering is, okay, so they're already going to cut Social Security, but does that mean it's going to go into effect this year? And also, could it be filibuster or the president veto this?
Yes. Thank you very much.
I'm close to retiring.
Okay. Here's where we are with that. Last week, I accepted petitions, 2 million petitions from seniors and others all over this country. And what they said loudly and clearly, and that was organized by the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, but other senior groups are active as well. And what the petition said is, look, you can't cut Social Security. You have millions of elderly people trying to survive in today's world on $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year. You got disabled vets trying to survive as best they can who receive Social Security. Do not cut Social Security. Well, I think we have put enough pressure on the Republicans, so I'm happy to say. Now, everything can change tomorrow, but the truth is, in the Republican Senate budget, there were no proposals to cut Social Security. It was a very bad budget, but they did leave out Social Security. More or less the same in the House budget. They've called for a study effort. So I think for the moment, at least, we have once again, against great pressure from the business roundtable, from the corporate world, we have beat back, at the moment at least. I'm not going to tell you it won't change tomorrow, efforts to cut Social Security. Now, the ideas that have been out there that the Republicans have brought forth in our various committee hearings are raise the retirement age to 70, raise the retirement age of Medicare to 70, the so-called chain CPI, which changes the way we define what a COLA is, which would lower COLA substantially for seniors and disabled vets. But, Cynthia, for the moment at least, we have beat back efforts to cut Social Security, and I'm very vigilant on that issue.
Diana in Gora Hills, California. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good morning, and it's always an honor to speak to you both. I do have a question for Senator Sanders, but first I want to say I'm super excited to be attending the Sister Giant Conference on March 28th and 29th. I can only attend one day, so I purchased both a ticket to attend the one day and purchased a ticket to see it live stream.
Right.
That's how excited I am to not miss out on any of it. So I hope you will say something about your appearances there and the rest of the honors.
Sure, and Mary Ann's going to be with us in a little bit. Diana, we're down to about 15 seconds in this minute. Quick question.
Senator Sanders is, I have already made a contribution to your presidential campaign. I will be continuing to contribute as I can, and I want to know what the status of your campaign organization and how that all is shaping up.
Where are we at?
Well, Diana, thank you very much for your support, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the Sister Giant event next Saturday in Los Angeles. Well, let's get back to that when the break is over.
Okay, great. We'll be right back. It's 20 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Senate.gov. Check it out. We'll be right back. Twenty minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls live. And Senator, one of our callers wanted to know how your presidential campaign is going, or the possibility of it.
Well, let's put the possible. It is, when you run for president of the United States of America, that is a mammoth undertaking, and you have to do it well.
Yeah.
And what we are doing when I'm out in California, we'll be talking to folks out there and seeing what kind of support exists there. The two issues or three issues that we have to address is when you take on the most powerful special interest in this country, in Wall Street and the big energy companies and the military-industrial complex and the drug companies and so forth and so on, can we rally and put together the kind of grassroots organization that we need to run a strong campaign in 50 states in America? And it's a lot easier to talk about it than actually putting it together. Are there millions of people who are prepared to work hard to take on the billionaire class? And the answer is that's what we're trying to ascertain. And the second issue, of course, comes down to the ugly situation of money. as a result of Citizens United, the billionaire class is, prepared to buy candidates and buy elections all over this country. And one needs to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to run a strong campaign, and they have to be, in my case, they will, if I run, will be based on kind of small and modest individual contributions. And you're going to need literally millions of them. And is there that kind of support? So I have no doubt, Tom, that the issues that we are raising, which is saying that we cannot continue the assault on the middle class and working families, we cannot continue never-ending wars, we cannot continue to ignore the crisis of climate change or the unaffordability of college or the growing and grotesque income and wealth inequality in this country. These are issues that have to be dealt with. And I know that there are millions and millions of people who feel as strongly as I do about these issues. But in the real world that we live in, where money has so much sway over the political process, where media determines what they will cover and what they will not cover, who's worth covering, who's not worth covering, these are all issues that have to be taken into consideration. But, we'll make a decision as soon as we can.
And just FYI, for anybody on the West Coast who wants to see Senator Sanders and me, both of us will be in Los Angeles 1 week from tomorrow at Marianne Williamson's Sister Giant event in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica, actually. And Marianne will be with us later on in the program.
And I wanted to thank Marianne very much for not only putting on that wonderful event, which has been so successful in the last couple of years, but for inviting me. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Daniel, in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, you are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Senator Sanders. Hi, Tom. I wanted to ask Senator Sanders, should Michael Froman be fired? Yesterday, Peter DeFazio was saying how Froman was pitching the TPP.
Hang on just a second, Daniel. Just for people who don't know who you're talking about, this is the guy who, on behalf of the Obama administration, is negotiating the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Back to you, Daniel.
Okay, thank you. He was pitching the TPP to that special session of Congress where we can actually take a look at the agreement now. Lucky us, huh? Mm-hmm. And he was saying how, we got 20,000 extra cars to the Koreans. And Representative DeFazio said, how many more now are the Koreans importing into us? And he didn't know. Well, the answer is 400,000. And, so many people are out of work because of these agreements. And I'm like, this guy should be, in my opinion, it's a fireable offense. He doesn't have any grasp in the facts. This was a minute detail he should have had down pat.
Well, Daniel, let me just say this. In my view, when we talk about the disappearance of the American middle class, and when we talk about the significant decline in manufacturing in America, and when we talk about why real wages have gone way, way down, I think an important part of that discussion has got to be our disastrous trade policies, which stretch back well over 30 years, and that is the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, CAFTA, trade agreements with China. And one has got to take a deep breath and say, okay, has unfettered free trade worked for the American middle class? That's a simple question. We have free trade agreements with Mexico as part of NAFTA. We have the Chinese free trade agreement. Are they working? Has the result of these trade agreements been the creation of millions of good-paying jobs in this country as we export our products to other nations? I think any objective assessment of these trade agreements tells us that by and large they have been disasters. Our trade deficit has soared. We have since 2001 lost 60,000 factories in the United States of America, 60,000 factories and millions of decent-paying manufacturing jobs. Not all of it can be attributed to trade. There are other reasons as well. But a lot of it can be. Now, this TPP, and by the way, when you talk about Furman is simply doing the bidding in this case. He's representing the President of the United States. And I have a lot of agreements with President Obama on issues. In some areas, I strongly disagree with him. And on this issue, I strongly disagree. In Korea right now, in Vietnam, the minimum wage is now 56 cents an hour. It's actually gone up, 56 cents an hour. Do we really want American workers to be competing against people in Vietnam who make 56 cents an hour? I don't think so. So to me, TPP is simply the culmination of, and another step forward, based on the same principles of the disastrous trade agreements we've had in the past. But by the way, it is not only forcing American workers to compete against low-wage workers around the rest of the world. What it also does is creates situations where if you're a pharmaceutical industry, who have been very active in these negotiations, you can force poorer countries around the world to pay higher prices than they otherwise would pay because you could prevent the rapid introduction of generics into the country, forcing them to pay for brand names. It also is that if you are a state or a federal government here in the United States and you pass environmental legislation or other types of legislation, that legislation could be overridden by an independent international jury that protects the interests of large corporations.
Remarkable stuff. Senator Bernie Sanders with us, taking your calls at our Brunch with Bernie Hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back right after the news here at the bottom of the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-536-2370.
And be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov. You can sign up for the Bernie Buzz, and then you can hop over to Facebook and check out his Facebook page there. Thom Hartmann here on the best of the rest of economic and labor news. You need to know this. Last week, the 30-year war on unions scored another victory, and Wisconsin became the 25th right-to-work-for-less state in our country. In addition to being bad news for unions in one more state, that new law has broad social and political implications as well. Thanks to Governor Scott Walker, half of our nation have enacted laws that make it harder for workers to stand up to corporate power and harder for families to bring home a living wage. And if Republicans have their way, there will be even more right-to-work-for-less states in the very near future. Anti-union legislation is currently being considered in Missouri, Indiana, and Nevada, and Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner unilaterally dealt a blow to public unions in his state. And don't forget about the anti-worker laws that took effect in Michigan, Ohio, and other states over the past few years. 3 decades of Reaganomics have paved the way for this new era of anti-union policies, and we, the people, will be left dealing with the political, economic, and social effects. Over the last century, labor unions gave us the power to take on the corporate elite and implement landmark legislation on everything from child labor laws to voting rights. By standing together, workers were able to demand fair wages and safe working conditions, and they were able to help people they believed in get elected. But about 3 decades ago, Republican lawmakers decided to stand with corporations instead of people, and they began dismantling nearly 100 years of progress. That attack on labor translated into stagnant wages, the loss of voting rights, and the rise of corporate power. And if we don't fight back, it could be another 100 years before we return to progress. These lawmakers have proven that they won't listen and that they don't care what the American people think. It's time to form new unions, even in right-to-work-for-less states, and to use the power of the people to take back our country from the corporate elite once and for all. California has a plan to make housing more affordable for many low-income residents in that state. Democrat Tony Atkins, the California Assembly Speaker, wants to charge a $75 fee on certain real estate filings and use that money for affordable housing development projects. The fee would have very little impact on the cost of purchasing real estate, but it could go a long way toward helping those who can't afford California's rising housing prices. 9 other states fund housing trusts with fees on real estate documents, and similar proposals have nearly passed twice in California. The only opposition comes from realtors groups who say the fees will increase closing costs. But it's only logical to ask those who can afford new homes to contribute a small amount to help out their neighbors. If you can afford a new home, chipping in a few dollars to help those in need, it's not too much to ask. In the richest country on earth, no one should be left out on the street. And this small fee could make a big difference to low-income Americans in California. While other states continue to expand Medicaid, Arizona wants to kick 500,000 people out of the program. Earlier this month, Republican Governor Doug Ducey approved legislation to tighten Medicaid eligibility in his state. That new legislation proposes kicking people out of the program if they've been enrolled for 5 years and requiring that they be employed to be eligible. Even former Governor Jan Brewer rejected the extreme proposal, saying that leaving so many people uninsured would force hospitals to pick up the tab and push Arizona's healthcare system to the breaking point. Governor Ducey, however, says that the new plan will ensure that Arizona has a responsible Medicaid program that protects taxpayers and provides care to those who need it the most. Right. Apparently, no one ever needs more than 5 years of care, and no one ever needs health care when they're unemployed. These requirements are simply un-American, and Arizona's new governor should be ashamed. If you want to join the fight against today's issues like racial discrimination and wealth inequality, there's a new movement that you may want to consider. The new Poor People's Campaign is a diverse coalition of advocacy groups and activists who are teaming up to tackle the injustices of our time. According to the campaign's website, we live in a time of profound crisis, a time where virtually everywhere, nearly all systems and institutions fundamental to society, political, economic, social, and religious, at best fail to meet people's needs and at worst cause widespread suffering. End of quote. So they are joining forces to fight the interconnected issues that cause and perpetuate failures in our society. The new Poor People's Campaign wants people to get involved and work together to fight for change. They say, quote, to build such a campaign, we need to unite. We need to strengthen our connections and sharpen our understanding of the problems we face, end quote. To find out how you can get involved, check out poorpeoplescampaign.org. And finally, danger, Will Robinson. Robots could put half of us out of work within 2 decades. According to a recent article over at redorbit.com, a new machine learning algorithm analyzed statistics from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and found that almost half of American jobs could be done by machines within the next 20 years. And according to Michael Osborne of Oxford University, it will leave us with much more time for fundamentally human tasks like art and social work. However, previous experts made similar predictions about our leisure time in past decades, but their predictions didn't quite pan out. Our productivity rate has increased so much that we should be able to take more time for non-work activities. But so far, it's only resulted in pumping out more products that corporations can turn into profit. Maybe this time the experts will be right, and we'll finally get that leisure society that we heard about decades ago. I'm sure we'd all like some extra creative time and a robot to finish all those boring tasks. And that's the way it is for the week of March 16th, 2015. I'm Thom Hartmann on the Economic and Labor News. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. And, Senator, you're there?
I'm right here.
Okay, great. Florence in Rainier, Washington. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, hi there, Senator. We're wondering if you could come to Washington State the weekend of April the 18th. We have large venues on hold in Seattle and Tacoma and Olympia. PDA sent the itinerary to your people. Please could you tell them you'd like to come?
Well, I would love to come at some point. I just don't know if what my schedule is. But we will, if you've sent us the invitation, we will get back to you, and we would love to come to Seattle at some point.
Thank you, Florence. Thank you. Jason in Washington, D.C., you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hey, guys. First thing, I think we need to correct Robin Hood. Robin Hood took money from the tax collector and returned it to the people who were overtaxed. But I wanted to address ethanol subsidies. Can we agree that this is a complete failure and an environmental disaster, and this policy needs to stop?
Among many other energy issues, I think it's one that we want to take a hard look at. I think one of the concerns is that around the world, the degree to which we put increased emphasis on corn for ethanol has an impact on food prices. But it is an issue that needs to be looked at very hard.
John in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, I had, I guess, more of a comment, but about TPP and what can be done about this. I think this is one of the most significant issues because essentially what we're doing is we're trading away our power to the TPP, and, you know, this is just abysmal. People can read the record of NAFTA and see what has happened. I mean, some of the suits were absolutely ridiculous, but this is, just not a good thing. And every union has come together in this country officially to, be against TPP. This is going to, talk about destroying the middle class. It's going to depress wages. It's going to affect drugs. It's going to do innumerable things. Tom has brought this up before, and so that's all I want to say. I don't want to take too much time, but I'll just...
well, John,
John.
Jason is absolutely right. And this TPP is a continuation, as I mentioned a moment ago, of trade policy written by the large multinational corporations, which will work for the large multinational corporations, but be a disaster not only for working families, but I think, as Jason indicated, for our national sovereignty as well. We kind of believe or are taught that democracy means we, the people, vote and elect people and make laws which work for us. But what happens in this process is some large corporation who feels aggrieved by a decision made by the federal government or state government. Maybe it's a food safety issue. Maybe it is an environmental issue. And they go to some board, an international board, and say, look, we are supposed to be able to make as much money as we can in the state of Vermont in the United States, and they've passed legislation, environmental legislation, food safety legislation, and it's limiting our ability to make money. And the goal here of the trade agreement is to maximize profits for corporations. And if this international board looks and says, well, you're right, this legislation is restricting your ability to make money. That's the criteria. We got to overturn those laws. So laws that were voted upon by the people of states or of America or of other countries. One example comes to mind, one particularly outrageous example. I believe, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Uruguay, a small little country, that passed legislation to try to help prevent children from smoking. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah. And the tobacco companies sued them under CAFTA or NAFTA or something.
Right. So here
WTO, whatever it was.
A little country is trying, in terms of public health, to do the right thing. Maybe it's by labeling on the cigarette packages. I don't know exactly what it was.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay, and warning people about the danger of smoking, doing everything they can to prevent kids from getting addicted to tobacco. And the cigarette companies say, you're ruining our ability to make money. We want to sell tobacco products to kids there, get them hooked. And how dare you limit our profit-making operations? And I think as a result of that, Uruguay had to withdraw its efforts or cease its efforts?
I'm not sure where it's at right now.
Yeah, and nor am I. But, if you're a small country like Uruguay taking on the multi-zillion-dollar tobacco industry, having to go to court and defend it, millions of dollars. So this is exactly the issue. In this case, a country like Uruguay tries to do the right thing, and they're taking on big tobacco and have to go before a board whose criteria is this impacting not the health of the people of that country, the children of that country, but whether it impacts the profits of the tobacco industry.
Right. Billy in Phoenix, Arizona, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, how are you guys? Senator, I have a question for you. We live in a society here in America where the majority of people don't even know that there is a midterm elections, which have consequences. They don't even know there's midterm elections at all. My question is, and Tom had the subject yesterday, I wonder if there's any way possible one day we'll have mandatory voting in this country, and if not mandatory, make it easier by some sort of app that goes on kids' smartphones or adult smartphones to let them know there's elections coming up, or to let them know that they're not registered and they can register via their app, and so on and so forth. This is something I've been going over in my mind quite often, so I just wondered...
Well, Billy, thanks a lot for raising that issue. I worry very much, and Tom and I over the years have discussed this issue often, about the future of American democracy. As Billy indicates, in the last midterm election we had, some 63% of the American people did not vote. Some 80% of young people did not vote. An equal number of low-income working people did not vote. And at the same time, the billionaire class Koch brothers and others, are spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to elect right-wing candidates who will work for their benefits. And that's the dynamic. And then on top of that, you have many states who are literally trying to make it harder, are trying to suppress the vote with all kinds of so-called anti-voter fraud legislation, which will make it more complicated for seniors and lower-income people to be able to participate. That's the landscape that we're seeing now in terms of the political process. And now my view is that we have to address this issue very frontally. You have countries in Europe, Denmark comes to mind, where 80, 85, 90% of the people participate in the elections, not 36%. So we have got to make it easier for people to vote. We have got to demand that the media talks about the real issues facing people so that people understand the significance of elections. I always, get startled when I hear you talk to people and say, "Oh, elections still crap. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to bother to vote." Meanwhile, the Koch brothers spend hundreds of millions of dollars on elections. So why is it that the richest people think that politics is really, really important, and many working people say, "Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to vote"? I think we should pay attention to what the Koch brothers do. They think elections are very important. They know that what goes on in the White House and Congress is very important. So I think Billy raises a very important issue. There are many things that we can do. I have proposed legislation, introduced legislation, calling for an election day holiday. We should take a day off during the year to celebrate democracy, where people will have the time to vote. We should work on various approaches to make it easier, whether it's postcards or same-day registration or lengthening the amount of time in which people can register to vote. But the goal is to create an inclusive democracy, to be proud when more people participate, not to go out of our way, as our many Republican governors are doing, to make it harder for people to participate.
Norma, in Montgomery, Alabama, you are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, thank you. Senator Sanders, I wanted to commend you on not losing your temper yesterday, particularly when my senator says he wants once again to cut the funding for Meals on Wheels, which feeds most of my neighbors. But also I wanted to ask you to please let people understand that if this TPP passes, our standards are so very low that most of us could wind up eating radioactive fish across the country because if a trade agreement with China says we import it, what will we do with it? Thank you.
All right, well, Norma raises the same very good point. Understand that these agreements, and here's from a political perspective, and again, it talks about why people are so discouraged and disillusioned with what goes on in Washington. All of the major trade agreements have been supported by Republican presidents. You got Reagan, Bush 1, Bush 2. You have Democratic presidents, Clinton, Obama. And corporate America has understood from day one that creating a global economy where they can move their manufacturing plants to low-wage countries, where they can outsource non-manufacturing jobs. Right now, the Internet is global. And why do you want to pay somebody $20, $25 an hour in the United States to work on a computer when you can pay somebody a third of that price in India or Russia or someplace else? That's what corporate America has understood. You go to those places where wages are lowest. But what Norma also raises is the fact that we will be sued by countries when we try to do the right thing to protect food safety or the environment.
More of your questions for Senator Sanders right after this. Stick around. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And visit sanders.senate.gov for, it's a great news site. You can sign up for Bernie's newsletter. It's just an enormous amount of useful stuff there. Welcome back. Larry, Williamsburg, Iowa, watching Free Speech TV on the Dish satellite. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, I was just curious on what they're doing on if there's any movement on getting the money back to the people who are disabled instead of cutting.
All right, thanks, Larry, for asking that. This is an issue I have been working on for years, along with some other people in the Senate. We've had some success and some failures. I am very, very worried about what's going on with the post office right now. We were unable, we came close to putting together an agreement, but we didn't, to lower delivery standards. So I think I'm hearing in Vermont, and if people want to call up about this, I'd love to hear from them, but we're hearing now that mail delivery is significantly slower than it used to be. Right now there is an effort afoot fairly shortly to start closing 82 processing plants around the country, which will impact some 15,000 workers. All of this stuff are things that I and other members of the Senate have been trying to prevent. And I think what Larry may be talking about is that every single year, and as a result of a decision made during the Bush administration, the Postal Service has to come up with $5.5 billion in future retirement benefits for their workers, health benefits for their workers. $5.5 billion every single year. They have more than enough money in that fund now to cover workers for decades, and we're trying to stop the post office from having to make those payments. So this issue of how you protect the U.S. Postal Service, how you make sure that its delivery standards are reasonable, how we give them the opportunity to earn more money is something, Larry, that I can tell you we are working on very, very hard. In fact, I think during the budget process, I will likely bring forth an amendment which tries to restore the delivery standards to where they were before.
Great. Ken, in Perrington, Michigan, watching Free Speech TV on the Dish Network. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you. It's an honor to speak to you, Senator.
Thank you.
I have just one question. I'm a political activist in Michigan, and what can I do that will have the most impact to help you get on the ballot to be our next president?
Oh, that's very kind of you, Ken. What we need, and here's the dilemma that we face, Ken. I think that there is very, very strong support for the agenda that we are talking about, which is rebuilding our infrastructure, creating millions of jobs, doing that, raising the minimum wage, dealing with pay equity, dealing with a fraudulent system of overtime, dealing with income and wealth inequality. Poll after poll tells us the American people want the rich and large corporations to start paying their fair share of taxes, climate change, all of that stuff. But what we need to do, and it's not just for me, we need to know to go forward that we're going to do well. Because if we don't do well, it's not just my ego that suffers. That's not important. But then our opponents say, see, all of these issues that Sanders is talking about, nobody really supports them. Nobody really wants a job program to rebuild the infrastructure and create millions of jobs. Nobody really cares about raising the minimum wage to a living wage. Nobody really cares that the top 1/10% own more wealth than the bottom 90%. How do we make people know that people do care about these issues? So, Ken, anything you can do, to rally grassroots activists to a progressive agenda, that would be fantastic.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Sanders taking your calls. More in just a moment. Ten minutes before the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls. Mike in Chicago. You are on the air, Senator Sanders.
Senator Sanders, great to talk to you. Senator, besides jobs, my generation, and I'm 40 years old, I'm concerned about the national debt, and my 75-year-old father and I have gotten a disagreement about this. He doesn't view it as being important. I understand, he's concerned about Medicare and Social Security, but your generation does not have to pay the money back. I do, and my future, kids and their children. So, and besides that, approximately $250 billion a year comes out of the budget to finance that debt. So, am I wrong, or
Well,
Can you help me out here? And why you think I'm up?
Mike, thanks very much for the question. It's a very important issue, and the arguments that your father and you are having are probably taking place all over America. So let me just say this about the debt and the deficit. Deficit today is somewhere around $480 billion, significantly less. It's gone down by about two-thirds since Obama has been president. When he came in, it was like $1.4 trillion. National debt has gone up. It's now about $18 trillion. Is that an issue that we should be concerned about? The answer is absolutely we should be. The debate is the best way to deal with the deficit and the national debt. In terms of Social Security has enough money in its trust fund, Mike, to pay out every benefit owed to every eligible American for the next 18 years, about $2.8 trillion in the trust fund. The way we should address Social Security to prolong its solvency and, in fact, expand benefits is to lift the cap on taxable income, which is now at $118,000. If you start at $250,000 and lift that cap, we can make Social Security solvent till the year 2061 and expand benefits as well. So, Mike, I think in terms of Social Security, that's what we have to do. But when you talk about the debt and the deficit, it's also important to understand how income and wealth inequality has exacerbated that problem. For example, in terms of Social Security, if we had the same levels of income and wealth inequality as we had in 1985, Social Security would have 20 years more solvency because people would have been making more money and paying more taxes into the Social Security Trust Fund. Second of all, if you want to deal with the deficit and the debt, what's the best way to do it? The best way to do it, in my view, is to end all of these corporate tax loopholes that prevent corporations from paying about $100 billion every single year in taxes in the United States. So the answer is deficit and debt are important, but what is even more important are creating jobs, putting people to work, creating a full employment economy, because not only does that improve the middle class, it generates more tax revenue, which will help us lower the debt and the deficit. So, long answer to a short question, but it's a complicated issue.
It's a good one. Jim in Lockport, Illinois. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, Tom. Senator Sanders.
Hi.
Yeah, Senator Sanders, first of all, a little shout-out to Ed Schultz. He's been on that TPP issue for quite some time, and I think we should all give him a little shout-out.
Amen.
Very important issue. But my question to you, Senator Sanders, is, Republicans always think they have the best ideas for this country. And I was always wondering, if their ideas are so great and they think Democrats are so wrong, why don't they allow the Democrats to run with their ideas? And if they fail, wouldn't they be proven right? Wouldn't they take over the White House and everything else?
Well, let me say a couple of things, Jim. In terms of the TPP and Ed and Tom, Tom, I may be wrong. My information may be outdated right now, but there was a study that came out a few months ago which pointed out that the major television networks have failed to discuss the largest trade agreement in the history of the United States, the TPP, at all.
Yeah, I think the one guy in all of television who's talking about it is Ed, and the one guy in radio who's it is me. There doesn't seem to be much more.
So, this gets back to a whole other issue, and that is the role of corporate media in allowing people to understand what's going on. The largest trade agreement in the history of the United States, the major networks, the most powerful media force in our country have failed to mention the TPP.
Right.
In terms of ideas, Jim, I do not, the Republicans' ideas, I used to think that they were serious ideas brought forth by serious people. We can disagree, but really they're not. What they are is ideology developed by the billionaire class to serve their needs. If you are the Koch brothers and another billionaire, you want to pay less in taxes. That's the simple truth. If you're a greedy guy and you don't care about anybody else, you want to pay less in taxes. So you hire some guys to explain, tell the American people why it is good for them that billionaires pay less in taxes. So they come up with all these theories. Tell the American people, if I want to end Medicare, tell the American people why, and I want to pay less in taxes because I'm a billionaire, tell the American people why it is a good idea for us to end Medicaid or cut back significantly, or Medicare, or community health centers. Tell the American people why. Come up with some convoluted theory. And the theory is, well, if we have competition in the marketplace, healthcare marketplace, they will lower prices and improve quality. Total bogus, but it's the theory. So what I'm saying, Jim, I really don't think, I respect people who have different points of view, but I honestly don't believe that what we are engaged in now is some kind of great intellectual debate about issues. I think what essentially the Republican agenda is an agenda paid for by the wealthiest people in this country. They're higher folks. If I am in the coal industry and I want to keep making profits, I hire somebody to tell the world why climate change is not real. Are we debating climate change, or is this just an effort by the coal industry to make more money? Kind of that's my view of where this debate is.
Yeah. It's brilliant. Senator Sanders, thank you so much for being with us today.
Okay, Tom, thank you.
Great talking with you.